Welcome back, everybody. We are the Giants of Backlog, back with another episode of our video game book club where we force each other to play through our ever growing backlogs. If you're familiar with us and haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like if you like the video, and we'll get into it. This week is my pick, and from our last video, I said that we would be playing Temtem. The way we start every episode is with a starter question, and I think that the best way to get into Temtem is to talk about a childhood classic that I think we're in the perfect demographic for. So I'm sure we've all played a lot of, which is Pokemon. Obviously, where Temtem got a lot of inspiration, if not most of and all of its inspiration from. So my question to you guys is, what is your experience with Pokemon? Yeah, just growing up and even more recently.
Uh, yeah, I can start. I played a lot. It was my first video game on Game Boy Black and White. I had Pokemon Blue. Played the shit out of it. Played a lot of the games all the way up until Black and Black 2, Black and White. So all through the DS and everything. So I played it for a very long time. Just got kind of burned out on the formula. Wasn't really impressed by what they were adding to each installment. Didn't think the new Pokemon looked as good as the previous ones. And yeah, just didn't want to spend time on it anymore. Became not worth time investment. Um, and then played, of course, Pokemon Go, like the whole world seemed to. And yeah, so I'm used to be a fan as a kid, but doesn't really appeal to me that much anymore.
Yeah, it's similar for me. I played Fire Red. It was one of my first video games. Loved it. Played every mainline Pokemon game up until Black and White. Bought all of the Nintendo handheld consoles to play Pokemon. Used to take my DS with me to school and play my friends at lunch. Played Pokemon Go. Fell out of love with the mainline games. They just got really repetitive. Didn't seem like they added new stuff anymore after, I don't know, probably Sapphire. So I don't know. Just found other turn based RPGs that I liked better, I guess, as I got older.
Yeah, for me, I played a ton, hundreds and hundreds of hours on my Emerald. Uh, Ruby was the first one I ever played, and then I bought Emerald, which is the same game, and played a shit ton of that. And then I got Fire Red, but Game Boy Advance was really the only console that I ever played Pokemon on. Once the DS came out, I never got a DS. Never got any of the. Never had a Switch or anything like that. Always, like when I was younger, I wanted to get a DS and a Switch just specifically for Pokemon. But like you guys said, as I've gotten older, I've heard all of the same thing. The formula gets stale. It's the same game over and over. Might as well play my Emerald again and go back to full nostalgia. Pull out my Game Boy SP as opposed to buying a whole new console just to play these games. But one thing I will say, oh yeah, I mean, talking about that, Pokemon Go, I still play Pokemon Go, which really, I think the only reason I do is because there's nothing else to play on my phone when it's all I got. And man, Pokemon Go might be the biggest grind game I've ever played. Like at this point, I'm level 40, and they raised the level cap to 50, I think. And XP between level 40 and level 41 is like 2 million XP, which is insane. It's like a ridiculous amount of XP. Plus, you need to complete challenges. So there's a challenge I still haven't even completed but I'm nowhere near 2 million XP since hitting 40, which I did probably a year ago. And the challenge is you have to catch 200 Pokemon in one day, which isn't crazy, but it is like committing a day to it, which I don't know if I want to do. It's not really the reason I play it. But I think for me, I've always said, like all through growing up and even more recently, that a Pokemon MMO where it really felt like you're exploring the world and catching a unique team and that you could use against other real people always seemed like a blind spot or just something that was missing that would be an awesome experience. So when I saw Temtem, I thought that this might scratch that itch that I've been thinking about, for years. So, Temtem, it's an MMO monster collector game, similar to Pokemon as we've discussed, developed by Crema. It was initially released in January of 2020 as an early access game and was fully released in September of 2022. The game features a lengthy story campaign, fully online world where as you travel through the world you can see other players, which allows for a co-op experience if you so choose. It also has a auction house where you can buy and sell your Temtem, allowing for an economy aspect of the game, as well as an emphasis on competitive gameplay. So competitive multiplayer gameplay through a pretty cool battle mechanic that starts with a draft and allows you to fight 5v5 versus other players, which is also incorporated a bit into the actual story when you're fighting some of the best trainers at the end of the game. So with that out of the way, let's get into hot takes. Paul, do you want to start us off with your hot take for Temtem?
I don't know if it's a hot take, but my thought when I was thinking of what my hot take could be, I don't think it's being hot to you guys. I think it might be hot to some listeners. My hot take is that even as a single player game, if you ignore all of the MMO aspects of Temtem, it's a better game than any Pokemon game going back to Diamond and Pearl.
Yeah, you kind of stole my hot take. My hot take was this is the best Pokemon game on the market today.
And my hot take is that Taifu's the coolest Temtem.
Your hot take is that Taifu's the best?
Yeah, Taifu's the coolest one. It's
pretty
a
cool.
little caterpillar. It looks like a Dragon Ball Z character.
That's true. Little chunky guy.
That's controversial.
No, people
That's
like
gonna get us
Taifu.
canceled, John.
Ask the people. The people like Taifu.
Best in the game?
Yeah, best in the game, I think. I mean, I'm partial because in the limited multiplayer I've done, Taifu's basically my carry, and I had it 1v4 once, so that makes it the best. I guess I forgot to do this before, but let's talk about how much of the game we've played, what we really got into while we played. I know that Jay, you and I, we started playing Temtem even before I picked it. Really, I picked it because I wanted to keep playing and didn't. And since it was my pick, I wanted to allow myself to just, without a worry of a different game in the background, just keep playing the game that I had been. But Paul, how much Temtem have you played? Did you get through the story?
No, not even. I played about 6 hours. So the last thing I did in the game, was I defeated, what's her name, Sophia, at the dojo. So I went through the dungeon and I freed her from whatever they call Team Rocket in Temtem,
The Belsodos. Belsodos can eat poop.
and I defeated her. I got beat my Belsodos. Yeah, Belsodos. So I've been about 6 hours in. I've got a full squad of Temtem. They're all in the upper teens and low 20s level wise. So I'll be bringing a new player's experience compared to an end game player's experience with you guys,
cool.
I guess, for this one.
Let's talk about. I know, Jay, this is one of the topics you wanted to hit. Let's talk about the music in Temtem. I'm going to start real quick by admitting that this is an MMO, and I have a lot of experience with MMOs. And so the first thing I do when I start playing an MMO is I mute the game and pull up a second window to watch YouTube or Twitch. So I did not hear this game at all. So that being said, I'm not going to have any input here, but I'm curious to see what I missed out on.
Yeah, I think the music in this game fucking slaps. There's a couple parts that I just kind of chill out in because I want to listen to the music. I have my wife sit there and I go, want to hear my favorite song in Temtem? And I go to that area and I stand there. And she looks at me like I'm crazy. But yeah, I really like the music. Some of the music in some places can get repetitive. Like if you spend a lot of time in the auction house or you're doing a lot of online battles, that can get like annoying because it's just the same song over and over again. But on a whole, I think, as John said, you don't typically go to MMOs for music. But what I'm saying is the bar was really low. They didn't have to go so hard on the soundtrack. And they did. And I appreciated it.
Where is the place that you go to just stand and listen to the music, Jay?
Meadowdale area in between Properton and Spoilers airship crash.
So if you want to hear the best music in the game, you're going to have to basically beat it.
Yeah, it's in the last island you get to.
Yeah, I agree with what you said about music and MMOs, with maybe the exception of Final Fantasy 14. I've heard the music in that game is pretty good. I think they had to go hard in the soundtrack because these games are inspired by Pokemon, and the music in those games is pretty iconic. I dig the violin main theme that plays in Arisola. And you showed me a song earlier that was like this, a lot of flute, went pretty hard, really good. The one note I had, and I don't know, tell me if this is changes later in the game, but it's missing that iconic battle start sound. And then the music in the battles just isn't intense enough like it is in Pokemon. Like I want that dun 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 dun. You can hear it in your head if you think about old Pokemon. But I love the soundtrack when you're walking around Arisola. It sounds so good. Better than the Pokemon theme when you're just walking around.
All right. So next thing I want to get into is the style of the game, and then the design of the Temtem themselves. So we can start with style of the game.
It looks like a 3D Pokemon game. Like it's on par with what the Pokemon team is doing at Nintendo, if not better. You can actually go inside. I heard that in the newer Pokemon games, like it's all one room buildings, and a lot of the buildings you can't even go inside. So it's full like 3D buildings with multiple levels in this one.
levels, elevators, every building that's there you can enter.
Yeah.
There's even a city that has 2 levels for the entire city. It has teleporters to take you up to the second level and back down.
Yeah, I think the style of this game is pretty cool. Is a little more cartoony, but everything looks so crisp and clean. Um, all the cities are and islands are distinct completely from one another, and it just adds to the overall vibe of the game. You know, you add the music plus the style, and you're in for a chill night.
So let's get into the actual cool stuff.
Okay. I mean, I was just gonna really quickly comment on the style of the actual temtem, like the art style, and I was just gonna say that I don't know. Jay said to me that there have been a ton of Pokemon clones, and like the main problem with them is that none of the monsters are look cool or interesting, and I agree with that take. And Temtem works so well because the Temtem are cool. There's a lot of them, and when they evolve, they get badass looking. Like I saw your squad that you've been fighting with, Jay, and they're so cool. There's so many Temtem that just have the look of like the legendary Pokemon, and you get like one or two of those in a Pokemon game, and Temtem is just full of Temtem of that monsters, whatever you want to call them, of that caliber. Being so early in the game, I haven't seen a ton yet in my playthrough, but even some of the low level Temtem, like my favorite one is uh two-way, which is basically just Toucan Sam. So it's a creative design, it works. I think it's better than just like a Pidgey from Pokemon. So I really dig the art style.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Temtem look off the motherfucking chain. I want to catch all them motherfuckers, you know? And I did. I caught them all. just got the achievement for catching, hatching, or evolving every Temtem in the game. So that was a grind, but I got them all. And all these guys look cool. Like Paul said, in a Pokemon game, I want to catch like one or two of those guys. But in Temtem, they did such a good job with the monster design that you just want to try different teams just to try to fit in a new cool looking Temtem. So, and it's cool because it's an MMO. I assume they'll continually be adding more. So instead of having to buy a new Pokemon game every couple years, you just keep playing Temtem, man. And yeah, that's what, like, I tried a lot of Pokemon clones, like, because I was like, I want to play Pokemon on my phone, and then they're all garbage. But that's when the hooks really sunk into me. Is you'll see a Temtem running behind another person in the world, and you'll say, "What the fuck is that?" And then you go and you scan it, and you get just like the picture in your Tempedia. That thing looks awesome. I need to find that thing, and it kind of propels you forward.
Do you have a favorite?
Yeah, it's Grumper. Grumper is a freak, and I love him.
What's your favorite, Paul? Oh, wait, you already said it's 2i.
Yeah, it's the toucan. Yeah.
2i is really cool too because it's the Eevee of the game and just gives it to you at the beginning. But instead of having 3 evolutions or 6, 5, 6, 7, whatever Eevee has now, 2i at release of this game already had the 7 evolutions, I believe. So you can make a full team of 2i if you want. 2i variations, evolutions to take into multiplayer. and I think that would be probably bad, but cool.
Bad if they have more than one electric type, right?
Right.
But then
Otherwise,
you could just bring in the rock 2i and it won't
True.
do double damage.
no. It seems like a pretty balanced team, actually.
Rock and crystal.
Yeah, I think they did a great job with the monster design as well. And like you said, I think there's an emphasis on catching all of the temtem because being new to the game, and there's a very complex combat triangle in this game that we'll get into, but you actually gain an advantage by owning or catching the temtem, that it will show you what attacks are powerful or weak against your opponents if you own that temtem. So I think that's a cool mechanic to emphasize the importance of uh, collecting all of the monsters. And like we said, in my hot take, my favorite is Taifu, because it's just a little tank. You get a couple bark shields up, and it just never dies. It's got two attacks that heal itself. It's got a move that just keeps giving it defensive stats. Thing doesn't die, and it can just take out the whole other team. Which, I'm at the very lowest level of multiplayer, so that probably will change. But for now, it's a lot of fun. So I want to get into the story. I don't really want to recap the whole story. The story is a little bit more interesting than a standard Pokemon story, but it is very similar in a lot of ways. I do think it's cool that as the game has progressed, they have added islands and continue to build on their main story. So I'm interested to see if, when they do add new areas, which I think the game is very well supported at this point, so I expect that they will continue to add areas and add content. So I'm interested to see what they do with that going forward. I guess my question to you guys is just, what do you think of the story? Is there any points that are or were that you thought were done very well, or is there anything that you thought was special? Remember, I'll remind the audience, because I didn't earlier, we are a spoiler heavy podcast. I don't know if we're going to spoil everything because Paul still is playing the game, but we might get into some spoilers here.
I think you should spoil the game. It's an MMO. I'm not in it for the story.
Well, I think the story is pretty good for what it is. There's a lot of twists and turns you don't see coming, and if you take a second from skipping through all the dialogue, it's actually pretty well written, and there are some clever jokes and some dialogue options that you could choose that were off the wall and made me not always laugh, but at least do a strong nose exhale. And yeah, I did like the story. I liked how it was a new story. It's not the typical copy paste of a Pokemon story. And they did keep some elements similar to Pokemon, but like as we already alluded to, the Team Rocket and if we're spoiling an Elite Four parallel, I guess we could call it. But super cool. Yeah, I dug it. And every time you get to a new island, you get to it a different way, kind of. And I thought that was pretty cool. I also liked how it was kind of like a Metroidvania with all these areas. I know they do it in Pokemon too, but not to the same extent. Of like, okay, here's glass you can only slide across until you get the skates, right? Here's a wall that you could climb up if you had the wall climbing gear. Here's a gap you could jump across if you had the rock hopping gear. So it was pretty cool that they did that, especially in a game that started off with not all the islands, where you get an item later in a later island, and then you can come back and find new quests, new items, new areas with the new gear you have. Gives you a reason to go back to earlier islands before the end game.
Yeah, and building off that, even into the end game, on the second island is one of the end game temtem that you can challenge in a arena and catch. And my first time going through the volcano, I never even noticed those climb up areas, the rock climb areas, because I didn't have the gear to do it and just didn't even recognize that they were there. And then when we go back, it's like a whole nother side to the volcano where you have end game content. So there's a lot of areas where you can go back and find meaningful content with all of the gear that you picked up through the story.
That's pretty cool. So like I mentioned, I didn't get super far into the story, but I do have some notes on Arisola, which is the first city. So we compare it to Red and Blue. Pewter City is the first city that you go to. And overall, I thought Arisola was much more interesting than Pewter City. Right off the bat, there's all these bodies of water, and there's people talking to you about, oh, you can get a surfboard, and you can see, like, okay, so it's going to make sense to come back here later once I have the surfboard. And like you guys mentioned, the spots that you can climb as you're going up the hilltop. The cities are just they feel much more lived in. There's way more buildings compared to the Pokemon games that I played. You can talk to all the NPCs, and a lot of them have side quests that you can do for rewards, which is pretty cool. Contrast it to, a Pokemon game where people just walk back and forth, and if you talk to them, they just repeat the same dialogue. So overall, I thought it was a much stronger tutorial city compared to the Pokemon games that I've played.
Next thing I want to touch on is the end game content. So once you complete the story, there is some end game content. At this point, it's not too expansive, but there are a couple dungeons that you can run. There is a final island called the Tamer's Paradise that has some different challenges. I haven't even done all of the challenges on that island yet, so still need to dive into that. But like we said, and we'll get into, really the end game of this game is focused around the competitive multiplayer. But for now, let's talk about this end game content, starting with the boss layers. I've only done one boss layer, that being with you, Jay, when we ran the Tyrannic boss layer. Tyrannic is this big T-Rex looking temtem that I remember one of the first days playing the game. being in Arisola and seeing a guy run by with a Tyrannic following him and going, oh, how do I get that? That is awesome. It's not even a temtem. It's just a T-Rex, and it looks super cool. I want that. And now we know how to get that. We know where it is, and we've learned how to do these boss layers. So the boss layers are basically you go in with a group of people, and you each need to navigate your own kind of roguelike area, your like stretch where you have different battles you need to fight. You have different options to pick, a battle. You can pick gain a temtem in your party, uh, gain items or gain bonuses, and you have to get to the end where you get to fight the final boss, assuming that your team has collected enough of the gems that allow you to open the final portal. So it's pretty cool. I didn't end up catching Tyrannic that time because I didn't strategize well enough in order to defeat it. So there is strategy that you have to come up with while you're doing your gauntlet as well in order to make sure your team's strong enough to take out the final boss. So I think honestly it's pretty good. It's pretty fun. I'm looking forward to running a few more because I still need to capture one. But to this point, haven't been able to do so.
Can I elaborate on that a little bit, John?
Yeah, go for it.
So, yeah, for the two main layers that exist in the game right now, it's Volgon and Tyrannic, and you can have a squad of 3 to 5 people enter it. And pretty cool. Like you mentioned, the roguelike, where you're all fighting your own way down these paths. But as a team, you have to hit a certain amount of diamonds to even be able to challenge the final boss. And there's trade-offs, like the bonuses. You said you can get like toxic temtem do plus 15% damage, and it forces you to experiment with new temtem because the temtem you're getting are either random or you get to get one from the teams you beat along the way. So it's a little bit of luck, but also you can strategize like, okay, I'm fighting Tyrannic at the end of this. I'm going to need at least a couple poison type temtem to beat him because he's only weak to toxic, I should say, not poison. So it's pretty cool, and it's a really tough fight at the end of it. He's got 5 health bars, and you beat him, and you get a Tyrannic egg, which then you can hatch. So yeah, it's fun. I've done both the layers. I got both the legendary temtem Volgon. I sat there waiting with a group of 3 for a long time, and they're like, you just want to do it as 3 people? And I didn't really want to because I had already lost the Volgon lair with 5 people before. But then we were waiting and nobody was coming, so we just did it with 3 people, and I ended up getting him that time, just a 3-person squad. It was harder, but it was fun, and there was achievement for that, so that worked out well. So yeah, I do like the raids. There's also a 2-person raid in Tamer's Paradise where you get to pick what the final boss is and get an egg of any temtem in the game, which is pretty cool. And it's a way to, if you boost the difficulty, there's difficulty sliders, and it increases like your chances of getting a shiny, the chances of its stats being better, etc. So yeah, I think there's actually a lot of end-game content. Like in Tamer's Paradise, there's the Draft Arena, there's the Safari, and then you didn't talk about buying your own house and decorating it. Now I can see some people end game is just getting money to decorate their house.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. There's a safari in Tamer's Paradise.
Yeah, but it's different. It's like a roguelike thing.
Is that? No, never mind. I was thinking. Yeah, I was thinking that was where you spent your time looking for the shiny Koish. But
No, that's in
no, that was Side Park.
And then there's other things like the postal delivery you can do every day. There's daily challenges, weekly challenges. There's a battle pass that you can take part in. There's every weekend 3 tournaments you can sign up for and fight in. And then the Koish fishing and the ranked ladder is really cool. I saw a guy who was legend, ranked 200 something. I was like, that's cool. I want to be legend ranked someday. Someday soon. Oh, and then clubs too. I think clubs are a lot of the end game comment because you can take over a dojo in an area, have your own people defend it, and other clubs can challenge you to a battle. You agree on a time, and your club faces off against the tamers in their club for control of that dojo in that area, and you get special benefits. You get gold from it. You get a side park area that's only available to members of your club. So the club wars, I think, would be really fun to get into if we can get the Giants of Backlog club up and running.
Yeah, I agree. And you just opened up the Giants of Backlog club, right?
Yeah. Come join if you're listening.
What's your in-game name so our listeners can reach out
DM
to you
me.
in your DMs?
Boy Keeper. Message me.
You heard it here. Message Koi Keeper, join the Giants of Backlog club so that we can take over one of these dojos and get our own little spot in the side park. Because side park, that's where you can farm the shiny of the week and make all that bank. So for me, my main source of endgame content that I've been focusing on, but probably will start getting into the other stuff now, has been just sitting in the auction house, flipping temtem. I've always enjoyed a game with an economy that allows me to purchase items, in this case temtem, low and sell them high. And I just love getting rich in video games. Like, that is, if there is a game with an economy, you can bet I'm going to be spending time figuring out how to get rich in that game. So lately, that's what I've been spending most of my time. I open it up and I'll sit in that auction house for hours. I have a whole notepad what I bought temtem at to make sure I can sell them. I sell them for more than I bought them for. I've been training scunches to level 100 and maxing out their HP stat, selling those for 30k a pop. Like, it's been good. But I think now that I have almost 1 million coins, it's time to get into some more of the late game content, finally get my Tyrannic, get my Volgon, explore more of Tamer's Paradise. But I know for you, Jay, your end game, I mean, it sounds like you've been a little more well balanced and done a lot of things, but I know you've been spending a lot of time in the multiplayer combat. I've played a few matches, still not that happy with my team, but I'll figure that out. But could you run us through that?
It's all about tweaking, right? You get in there with whatever team you got, and you say, I'm really weak against teams that have this type of temtem. So how do I counter that? And then you work a new one into your lineup, figure out how to take the old one out without getting weaker. and you just constantly evolve your team like that. And so I've been having a lot of fun in ranked. I, before recording this, got to diamond. I was pretty happy about that after being stuck in gold for a while, which isn't saying a lot. I got placed gold, so I didn't go up that far, but hopefully legends soon. And yeah, it's just a lot of fun. I enjoy games where I can outthink the opponent. There's a lot of matches where on paper I lose because of my weaknesses, but end up pulling it out because I just played better. You know, a lot of it is about swaps, and when you get into the more competitive range, it's about predicting what they'll swap to, or predicting that they're predicting you'll swap, and calling their bluff and staying in, right? So there's a lot of mind games to it, and I really enjoy that. What I've done, John, which has helped me win a lot more matches after I figured it out. You have your temtem die, and then you put in a temtem that's weak to what's currently out there on their board, and then they'll use it baits them. It works every single time. They'll use their high hold move on your weak temtem, saying this guy's an idiot. He just swapped in what's weak to my guy. And then you swap that in for what's strong against it. They waste their stamina, they waste their move. You fuck them up. I started winning a lot more when I started doing that, doing the juke. But, it's just a lot of fun. There's some VMs, there's some crazy there's some crazy, like, I don't know what you call it, when you enter and your pose you do, and when you win the pose you do, and you can actually emote during the match, so you can be them that way, like start clapping or eating popcorn or something. So it's pretty fun. And John was watching me play a handful of matches where, like, one time I BM'd this guy because his attacks were healing me more than they were hurting me, so all I did was wait until it ended on turn limit and won that way. There's ones where they quit after the first turn because I know what they're gonna do and countered it. So it's my kind of competitive play, and I'm used to John always being better than me at multiplayer games because we play mostly shooters, but it's kind of nice for once to be better in a multiplayer game, at least for now.
I will say I am a lot better at brainless games. This one, I got to get into it. I've been putting it off because I haven't wanted to think in a while. But
you would,
yeah, I'll get into it.
Think though, with
we'll
how
see.
much you like Hearthstone, this would be right up your alley. It's a lot of the same
tactics. I think I just like, even with Pokemon, I always had a hard time figuring out the combat triangle, which I don't know. I don't have the memory for it. It just doesn't stick. And this combat triangle feels way more complicated.
So it's the exact same as Pokemon. All they did was they added crystal and digital to the mix. Otherwise, all the weaknesses and strengths are the same. Well, they have different names, but they're the same. And I do want to talk about that. The starting three, it's like fucking genius. Temtem. So the starting three are mental, melee, and crystal, right? So mental strong against melee, melee is strong against crystal, crystal strong against mental. As these things, so that's your triangle right there. As those three starters evolve, the one becomes water, water mental. The other becomes crystal toxic. and the third one becomes mental or melee rock. So it's the triangle, and then they reverse the triangle as well as they evolve. So they're all strong and weak against each other in the final evolution, which I thought was genius when I realized that, that they did that, because toxic's strong against water, water's strong against rock, and rock is strong against crystal. So I hats off to Crema. I think they killed it with this game, and I think it's a shame that a lot of people seem to have written it off and aren't giving it the time it deserves.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, I mean that's like the big topics that I've gone through. I know there's a lot of little things that are really cool in this game. So just open the floor now. Is there any other topics that you guys want to touch on?
Well, you kind of touched on it a bit, but I just wanted to talk about the battle system in this one. And I think it has a lot more depth than the battle system in Pokemon. So for starters, it's always 2-on-2. It has a stamina system instead of the PP system, which I think really adds depth because you can overexert your Pokemon to use a move that you don't have enough stamina for, but it's gonna cost you some health. Pokemon kind of has that with and a turn. Pokemon kind of has that with like the struggle move, but that's just kind of lame and doesn't really do it. So I feel like the devs took that idea and it turned into the stamina system, which I really like. Also with the 2v2, the synergy system where you can boost the power of your attacks. It doesn't really seem like you use that too much in your multiplayer though.
No, I absolutely use that. Koish has a trait called Synergy Adept, where it adds an extra boost to synergy moves. So, like for example,
Mhm.
and there's also a priority system to moves too. So even if another temtem is slower, if it has a higher priority move, it'll go first. So it's pretty cool. But there's, for example, my Mance has a move that is just a digital move. It does okay damage, but when I put a psychic in with it, it also applies the Doom status effect. So it's kind of cool the way you can set it up in competitive is queue up that move and then swap in your other temtem for the temtem you need for the synergy and hit them with it without them knowing it's coming. So the synergy opens up a whole nother aspect, and I'm glad you brought that up, Paul.
Yeah, I just think there's a lot more depth here compared to Pokemon.
I agree. And the traits. Each temtem has two different traits. So it adds even more to the mind games of it, because somebody could put in I don't know, any temtem, and it could be a completely different build depending on what trait it has and what they're trying to do with it. And so that, and then gear as well. I don't know if there is held items in Pokemon, but the gear is such a huge factor in multiplayer because the gear completely changes, you know, just how strong your Temtem are if you have the right gear on them.
Yeah, it really feels like to me that they built this game with uh, multiplayer, with the battle, with an emphasis on improving the battles in Pokemon. uh, as like the main driver of this game. I think that when you're talking about improvements that this game made over Pokemon, there's a lot of things, right? From a fresh story to uh, a mount that allows you to go through brush without needing to use repels every 30 seconds to just a whole ton of uh, quality of life improvements to just improvements that make the game more fun. Talking about stamina, one thing that's really nice about stamina is if you have a temtem that is really strong or you're over leveled in an area, you can just take everything out and not need to go back to a health center just to restore your PP, right? Your stamina always goes back up to 100% between battles. So if you're as long as your health doesn't go down, you don't gotta waste your time going back for no reason. Which again, another nice quality of life uh, change. But there's just so much they did with the combat, with the battle, with how battles are set up. We didn't talk. I think earlier I said something about it, but the draft format for competitive multiplayer, where you bring in your pro team, which is a team of 8 temtem, each with assigned gear, each uh, built to however you decided to build them. And then you have a pre-game lobby where you do a draft that starts with a ban phase, a pick ban phase, so that you and your opponent, sometimes I've seen Jay, you win battles before they even start just in pick ban. Like, there's so much strategy that goes into that just to start. They eliminated RNG. There's no crits. There's no misses. There's just strategy. And it makes, a game that, if you're going to put so much time into perfecting your strategy, you don't want to lose on RNG. And in this, they remove that, which is really nice.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody hates like, oh, I got crit, I lost, or oh, my big move missed, and that's just the way it goes. And yeah, I can't sing the praises of multiplayer enough. Every day you have a resetting quest where it's win 1 and then win 2 consecutive, which some days it's easier to get than others, but you make a lot of money from that, right? And in 2 or 3 matches, I can make 30K, John, because of those 2 quests. I get like 5K from each win, and those quests are each like 10K. So it's cool. There's the feathers too. So you win feathers from competitive. You win feathers from doing the end game content, from getting kudos. And there's an end game store that has furniture or cosmetics, and there's a rotating store that you can use feathers to buy stuff for, and you can get the paid currency from doing those weekly challenges too. So I think they're doing pretty good on the end game content stuff. I would just like to see them add more raids and maybe a new area. But that snow area that got added to that's new, and they added Momo with that area. So yeah, I don't know. I dig it.
I think we touched on the big things. If you guys can think of anything else you want to talk about real quick. If not, then we can get into scoring and close. So let's go ahead and give Temtem our Giants of Backlog scores. I can start basically what I just said. I think Temtem is a improvement on the Pokemon formula in almost every way compared to the newer Pokemon games that have followed the same formula for 10 plus years. I think that there is so much potential for me, and the reason it's potential is because I haven't dove into it enough in the competitive gameplay at the end of this game, and for all the reasons that I've already said. So I've really enjoyed this game. I put a lot of hours into this game in the last, at this point, probably month. And I just think that it's definitely a game that's worth getting into. We didn't talk about competitive, the multiplayer at the end of the game, and it does. I don't even think it needs to be at the end of the game. Do you unlock it, or can you do it earlier? We had talked previously, you and IJ, that you don't even need a full pro squad to play ranked matches. It gives you the option just to bring in a pre-built squad that you can choose your temtem as long as you've unlocked them in your
Tempedia.
what, Tempedia. Nice. I think there's so much potential, and it's really something I gotta dive into. And I've just enjoyed this entire game as a whole. That being said, as of now, I'm gonna give Temtem a 9 out of 10.
I can go next before you, Jay, to give you the short experience. So as I mentioned, I've only played about 6 hours. I didn't really explore any of the multiplayer aspects of this game. I played it as basically a single player game. But I think, like we've talked about, this game clearly inspired by Pokemon, but inspired by the OG Pokemon games. Your rival in this game, his name's Max, and he has one of the digital Temtem that isn't an option for you to pick. And he's a total dick to you at the beginning of the game, and he beats you. And I just love that so much because in the newer Pokemon games, they just water down the rival so much because it's so kid friendly and family friendly. Talking to you guys about this, I said this is Pokemon but for adults. And I really dig what I've played so far. I like all of the stuff there is to do and see, all the places you can go inside of, the people you can talk to in the city. I like the side quests that they give you. There was one where you meet this little girl and she wants to play Temtem, and she like quizzes you on your knowledge of all the different Temtem, and it's really cute and just like a fun little mini game. And she gives you like an apple at the end of it. All kinds of stuff like that. The game's just full of charm. The music that we talked about. So my score as of where I'm at right now, I would give it an 8.5.
Okay, my turn. Yeah, we didn't really touch on it, but this game's harder than Pokemon. I've never lost a Pokemon gym battle, and a couple of these gym battles or dojo battles in Temtem have taken me a couple tries. The Elite Four took me what, John? Over a week to beat.
Yeah, same.
It's hard.
It's really hard.
The layers, it's not just like, okay, I'm gonna go get my legendary now. You're gonna lose some runs, you know. So I did enjoy that throughout the story. It was more difficult than your typical Pokemon game. That being said, I really like this game. I don't really think I would change anything about it. I like the music, I like the gameplay, I like how deliberate they were with every mechanic, and every mechanic feels like it deserves to be in the combat system. I like the way the Temtem look, and I'm going to keep playing this game. I'm sure it's the game I'm continually playing in the background as I play other games. So even if it is just to do a couple ranked matches a day or jump on for a tournament, or if we're doing a dojo battle as the Giants Backlog Club, it'll be fun. So, yeah, looking forward. I hope Temtem has a long future ahead of it. I hope people check it out. I hope they support it. And I give this game a 10 out of 10.
Wow. So, you heard Giants of Backlog, we're right behind this game. We're going to keep playing this. We're going to keep supporting this game. So, anyone who's been interested and thinks it's finally time to give Temtem a try, it's definitely worth it. Get on, join our dojo, hit the like and subscribe button, and we've been the Giants of Backlog. Thank you very much. Our next game is going to be a community pick. This community pick will be our first that the Giants of Backlog have ever run. And I believe, Jay, you have the results of what we're going to play.
Yeah. So the community has decided we will be playing Inscription.
That's cool.
Ooh, spooky.
I had Inscription in our Fantasy Critic League. I picked that one up, was it last year in that league? So I'm familiar with the premise of it. I'm excited for that game.
Yeah, should be fun. Glad the community picked it.
All right. Thank you, everybody, if you made it this far. We'll see you in 2 weeks for Inscription. We've been the Giants of Backlog.
Yeah, thanks everyone.